Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to ParaMystic Podcast. I am your host, Kristina Bloom, and I'm glad that you're here with me today. I just want to cover a few things before I bring out my guest. Really interesting guy. He's got a really interesting story to share with you. So stay tuned for that. Coming up this Sunday on February 22nd, my friend Deidre Sanford and I will be doing an online gallery reading. So that event is up on my Facebook pages. It's shared on her Facebook pages. And we are going to be just doing an online gallery reading. So you can go there, you can register. The tickets are $40. And we are really excited to be doing that. It's at 2 p.m. Central Time until 4 p.m. Central Time. So get your tickets for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then, sorry, I'm looking at my calendar here. The 28th of March, I will be in Escanaba, Michigan at the Spring Mind and Body and Spirit Fair. So I will be up there for that. And then March 30th through April 2nd, we will be doing another round of Linda Ledbetter and I will be doing another round of the Celebrating 5D and Beyond retreat, and that will be at Black's Cliff Resort in Hazelhurst, Wisconsin. So that event is also up on Facebook, and you can look that up and get your tickets there. The cost for that is $777, and there are some other payment options available that are right there for you to look at. So that is what's coming up for me. And I hope that we have lots of fun stuff coming up for all of you too. I'm always adding things in. You know, I'm going to be on tomorrow. Wow, tomorrow on the 19th. I am going to be a guest on the Paranormal Spectrum with Barnaby Jones. So you can look for that tomorrow live on Barnaby's page. Or on the CAPS page. I knew it before I tried to say it. That's all right, the CAPS page. So with all of that, welcome. I would like to welcome our guest, Stephen Korzinek. Hi, Stephen.
Hi there. Good morning.
Let me just do a little biography here on you. Stephen Korzinek is a gifted empathic intuitive with over 20 years of experience working with all ages as a life coach, spiritual healer, and mentor. Over the last 3 decades, Stephen has transitioned from a life of self-destruction to a life of wholeness. He has navigated a transformative journey of self-discovery and healing. Spirit came calling in the depths of misery and guided him to the light, a rebirth that gave his life a restart. With a wealth of lived experience and divine intuitive guidance, he imparts valuable wisdom to diverse audiences across the Midwest. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here, and God, you guys are so good. I love this already.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that.
And I have never done a podcast, and actually I haven't really been out to do anything for about 10 years. I've just been focusing on helping others and really not promoting myself or anything. So this is a new thing for me.
Awesome. So tell us about the journey that got you here.
Yeah, the best way to get to know me is through my story, because it's kind of unusual. I was a very reluctant traveler at the beginning of all this. I was raised I'm in central Wisconsin. I was raised in Racine, Wisconsin to parents who were Catholic that had anger and alcohol problems. That's the best way to explain it. And my dad had 2 older brothers that were priests, and that was very influential on me and my siblings growing up, because they instilled a lot of their belief systems into our family, and could be kind of harsh about things. And this is the 1970s, you know. So I started out questioning who I was from a young age and wondering why I was here, and I didn't quite understand that. My parents didn't understand me either. And when I was about 11 years old, they started sending me up to my uncle's seminary because I believed that they wanted me to become a priest. And I had really good experiences up at that time. I learned how to connect to nature and to animals and to the land in a way that I don't think I would have had an opportunity otherwise. But fast forward into my high school years, I felt really unloved and misunderstood. I thought that I would never amount to anything, and I really was hard on myself because I was questioning who I was as a person, as a man, a lot of things. And so I lost my best friend at the age of 16, and it was so devastating to me. I couldn't handle it. And my parents were telling me to get over it, and I couldn't. So I turned to smoking marijuana as an escape of my fears. That's how it kind of started. I wouldn't go to alcohol because alcohol was dangerous in my family.
Right.
So then by the age of 17, my sister introduced me to freebase cocaine. And I decided I wanted to be an artist. My whole life I wanted to be an artist. So I talked my mom into letting me enroll in Cardinal Stritch College, which was a liberal arts college in Milwaukee. And I brought a lot of drugs with me up to Cardinal Stritch, even though at that time, this is 1980, there was still nuns living in the dormitories on the third floor.
Okay.
And because I was raised around priests and nuns, I had no fear of being around those people. I just saw them as regular people.
Right.
When we got in trouble in my family, when you got in trouble, especially as you get older, the priests would show up. So at 21 years old, I was quite the rebel. And I was already failing out at college because I was partying too much. And I got kicked out of college. And when all these things started to take place, my aunt, my dad's sister, started calling the priest to show up at my door to try to save me. And they would show up, and they were very intimidating. And they would bring a lot of holy water and spray me down and pray over me and tell me that I was going to burn in hell for what I was doing, you know. I know they had the best of intentions at that time, and it was kind of the way things were back then, even though it wasn't healthy or acceptable, really. Because I felt condemned, you know. So the last thing my Uncle Richard said to me at 21 years old is, if you don't change, God will forsake you. The church will forsake you. The family will forsake you. And the only thing that's going to come get you is the devil one day. And at that time, you know, I believed what he said. Well, I figured at 21 years old, and I'm a partier and I'm getting into some trouble, I figured, well, gee, if I'm going to go down to hell and burn for eternal damnation, I might as well have a good time on the way.
Right. I kind of had the same mindset, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So many of us do. Because we're not taught how to really see the love and the value and the uniqueness of each of us in this place, you know? So that's what I did. I ended up homeless by 23, and by 24 years old, I was in and out of jail for violence towards my family, and they kicked me out. My sister was living in northern Wisconsin at the time because she wanted to get away from me because I was such trouble.
Wow.
So she brought me up to northern Wisconsin, and I only lasted about 2 weeks living with her before she kicked me out. And I ended up getting an apartment with a friend, and the landlady was very nice and kind of lonely and kind of enabling of us. My roommate only lasted a week before I scared him off too. And so I was in this apartment by myself, drinking myself to death, because after I got done with drugs and I had been homeless, I had no way to get drugs like I used to. So I turned to what is most available in Wisconsin, which is liquor. And even though I told myself I didn't want that drug, I needed something. So that's what I leaned on. And by the time I was 30 years old, I was very ill from consuming so much liquor that I had a distended abdomen, and I knew that I was not long for this world, really. It got to be so bad that I couldn't walk, get out of bed easily. I'm just going to be honest, I would piss the bed. I would only be able to function early in the morning to go shove a bottle of rum down my pants at the local grocery store. I didn't work. I couldn't function. And the one thing that I did from about the age of 15 to 30 years old was pray to God to kill me, because I didn't think I deserved to live, and I didn't think I was a valuable person to have that opportunity. And so at 30 years old, it got to be so bad that I was afraid of what was going to happen. If I was going to have a ruptured esophagus and bleed out, which happens with alcoholics. And so I started keeping a 5-gallon bucket next to my bed, waiting for that experience to happen. Because I told myself, if I'm going to bleed out, I'd like to catch it so that I can contain the mess. And that way, when the coroner and the cops show up, they'll tell my family, well, at least he tried to, contain the mess a little bit. I was more afraid of what my family thought than anything else.
Okay.
And that was torture for me, because I had lost everything and lost everyone. And I was alone. I was utterly alone. All I had really was this dog, a Labrador mix that I loved, and I felt the only reason I was alive was because of this dog. So I'm praying to God at 30 years old, kill me, kill me, kill me. I can't do this anymore. And a voice came into the room. And that voice, I thought, was coming through the dog, but to this day, I don't know, because it was in the middle of the night, and I never stopped drinking. I drank 24/7, so I was totally out of it. But this voice comes into the room, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's the devil coming to get me. Just like Uncle Richard said. And this voice said to me, what would you like to do about your life? Would you like to die of misery and despair? Because the choice is yours. Or would you like to be born into the light? The choice is yours. And he kept saying that over and over. Would you like to die of your choices of misery and despair? Would you like to be born into the light? Well, being raised in my family, I didn't know what the light was. And I was so terrified at that moment that I screamed, I'll go to the light, I'll go to the light. Because I was too afraid of being cast into further damnation, even though the state I was in was the depths of hell, really, it was.
Right, yeah.
I mean, you don't wish that on anyone when you're a chronic alcoholic. It's the worst experience possible. And so the next morning, I woke up freaked out. What happened? I can't handle this. What happened? And I went down to my landlady and I said, take me to the healthcare center. It was our local county healthcare center where they treated people for alcoholism and drug abuse. Mm-hmm. And I said, take me to the healthcare center right now. I need help. She drove me there. And then on the way there, I'm thinking, wow, I feel so good today. I could have driven here myself. I walked down the hall and I'm thinking, wow, I feel really good today, considering everything that's been going on. And I sat down with a little lady and she did my intake assessment, and I was 0.46 alcohol level. And I wasn't even supposed to be conscious at that level. And yet I was feeling really good. And the funny thing is that lady, when she's doing the intake, she hears Spirit say to her, you're going to know this man one day. Now, she thought that was the craziest thing in the world at the time. And she admitted me into the healthcare center, and I got treatment, and I got sober for the first time since my teen years. And I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know how to face reality. I didn't know how to climb the mountain of recovery after so much loss and self-abuse. And I got sent to the doctor, and the doctor they did all the tests on me, and they said, your liver is half full of cirrhosis. And if you don't get your act together, you're going to be dead in a year and a half. Well, when you have a mindset that you want to be dead, I got out of the healthcare center and shoved a bottle of rum down my pants on the way home and started it all over again. because I didn't know any other way.
Right.
And I would fall into the depths of the addiction and wake up in the hospital or the healthcare center, and they'd say, "You're going to be dead." And I'd say, I know, because I wanted to be. I didn't know how to live. So I'm struggling in and out of the system for 2 years, and I realize I'm not dying like everyone's telling me every time I show up at the healthcare center.
Well, darn it.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I was so pissed.
Yeah, I'll bet you were.
Because how can I live when I've hurt so many people? How can I move forward when I've destroyed the first half of my life?
Yeah.
But I didn't die. And on some level in my heart, I knew that I couldn't give up. And I would sit down with a drug counselor, and I felt that they couldn't help me. So I would go on to the next. And I think I went through 6 AODA counselors, alcohol and drug counselors at the time. And finally, I heard about a men's group, and I signed up for this men's group at the healthcare center. And the man facilitating it, when I walked in, I heard his voice, and his voice drew me in. And I said to myself, this is a man I can trust. And I went to him for help. And he said, well, you got a big file. Give me a week to read it. and we'll set up an appointment.
Okay.
And that man had very similar experiences to me in addiction. And he had a rough life as a child, and he could relate, and I could relate to him. And as he helped me to get sober. And as soon as I got sober, that voice of spirit started showing up again. But at that time, I was told by a physician that I would be mentally ill, that I would be disabled, that I wouldn't be able to function in life, and that even if I did survive all this, that I would need to go on disability, and because I would be mentally and physically ill as I got older, and my brain and my body started to come out of this. And so, when the doctor told me that, by this time I refused to believe what he said, but I still didn't understand it all, and I was afraid of being mentally ill, schizophrenic, bipolar, whatever, And but something in my heart said that's not the case, and I just kept trying to help myself. And through this process, that voice came in and started to instruct me on what I needed to do for myself to get to a better place. And some of the first things they said to me was, you need to learn acceptance of everything that's happened, and understand it's for the highest good. How can you see it as the highest good when you've hurt so many people? The second thing was to learn to forgive myself and forgive anyone who trespassed against me. And that's a hard thing to do when you've hurt your mother, when you've scared your siblings, when you've destroyed people's lives, as I did. And then the third one was to love myself unconditionally, and to state love to myself unconditionally every day until I believed it. That was the hardest one of all, and that's hardest for all of us.
Yeah.
But because I was so afraid to go back into the darkness of my addiction, I said to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit to loving myself and to pushing through. Now, when I heard this voice, at the time, I really didn't know what to think, but I listened, but I really did think I was crazy. I really did. But I listened. And the funny thing was, it didn't feel crazy to me. It felt good. It felt nurturing. It felt loving and supportive. But remember, I'm raised Catholic. This stuff doesn't happen to me. And so, but I listened, and I started to improve my life. And I went to my drug counselor, and I said, I want to go back to college. I had started college at Cardinal Stritch in Milwaukee, like I said, and I got kicked out a year and a half in for stealing and doing all sorts of mischievous things. And I wanted to go back to college and finish my degree, because I figured that's the only way I can get any kind of employment in the future. So I was afraid to do that. And I went to my drug counselor and said to him, how can I go back to college when I've hurt so many people, failed at life, and are so self-destructive? And he said, how old do you feel? And I turned to him and I said, I feel like I'm 21. I feel like I'm born again into a second experience. And he said to me, then you're going to go to college and you're going to lie about your age and you're going to acclimate back into life. It's no one's business what happened to you until you're ready to tell the story. Mm-hmm. And I was about 32, 33 years old by then. So I signed up. He helped me sign up for classes at the local college in town. And I met students for the first time. It was, with a clear head. And I started to relive the experience all over again of my college years. And so I got into art like I always wanted. And I started to create art. And that art started to reflect what had happened. And I transferred to a bigger college in another town. And I started to create sculptures and different things that represented me as a person who was self-destructive and just violent. I was violent and addicted. Excuse me. And when I started to create this art, it started to get recognized. And my advisor and the dean of the art department came to me and said, now no one knew anything about, they knew that I was different. They knew that something had happened, but I really didn't let much out. But right. They came to me and they said, we feel you have a story to tell and we're going to give you that opportunity. So they gave me a whole gallery and they said, and this was in spring. And so we were going to go on summer break. And they said, in fall, when you come back, this gallery is yours and you're going to fill it up with something that calls you. So that summer I did found object sculptures, and I always was into nature. So I always collected things, carcasses and bones and rusted metal and anything that just appealed to me. And soon I had piles of debris in my backyard and my friends were leaving roadkill at my back door. And I went into school.
As they do.
Yeah. I told him I don't want the flesh attached,
I just want the bones. Yeah.
Right. I wanted the bones. And when I was a kid, there's nothing better as a kid than to find a skull in the woods, and I just cherish that natural history, I guess is the best way to put it. Anyhow, I started to collect all these things and my advisor said, Stephen, tell your story. So I made a sculpture of my misery and despair in addiction. And when I had to do a professional opening and everything for this show. And I was so afraid of what people were going to think. And I was failing at math. I didn't care about being a good student. I just cared about being an artist. And I was failing at math. So I invited my art teacher. She didn't know me that well, but she went into the gallery before it had its official opening. And she came out of viewing the gallery and said to me, wow, what have you been through? Wow, what have you been through? And actually, she passed me in my class because she felt sorry for me, I think. Anyhow, then the college said, we want to bring students in to interpret what you're saying. And I was afraid because I didn't really open up about this stuff, but I knew it was time. And the whole time, Spirit is in my ear telling me how to feel about myself, how to understand others, how to see the world, how to see people, how to see myself. They would say things to me like, as you know yourself, you shall know others, for everyone is one. As you love yourself, you shall love others, for love is the driving force of the universe. Things like that. Mm-hmm. But I listened, but I didn't quite understand it. And at the same time, this took me years to figure out, but my drug counselor was that same voice. And he would say things to me about my vibration, raising my vibration, raising my internal power to help the world, and that I needed to go through this suffering and this addiction so that I knew what it felt like for others as I went in to work with others. And he would say, you're going to work with people one day. And I would argue with him and say, I can't even hardly pay my rent. How am I supposed to work with people? It all happened anyhow.
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So they opened up the show, and the first student group that came in, I'm standing there and I'm so scared. And a student next to me turns to me and says, wow, what did your mother do to you? And that little sentence just changed my whole outlook. And I went, wow, they do get it. They do get it. And I started to talk about it. And that sculpture was so popular that they gave me 2 other spaces to do more. So I spent the whole semester making these huge sculptures out of barbed wire, skulls, carcasses, all these things that I would find, and weave in my story into it. And so I graduated with a fine arts degree. And my family never showed up for my graduation, but my drug counselor and his wife did. And I got out of college and I went, well, I'm going to do lands. I was really good at landscape design. I'm a really good gardener and I love growing stuff. And so I was already in college. I was going out and I was gardening for people in town. And I was making relationship connections for the first time in my life. And I realized that a lot of my work started in the garden. I would be out there working the garden, and then the people that lived there, especially the wives, would come out and talk to me. Next thing you know, I'm at their kitchen table talking to them about their adult children, or I'm talking to them about what's going on in their lives. And I'm sitting there and it's just coming out of me. I didn't even realize it really. But a lot of other people did. And I've heard that since. I've heard from different neighbors and friends how I would talk to them and things would come out of me, and I had no clue, really no clue.
Right. Well, that's what happens when spirit talks through us.
Right. And that's, there is no separation. The only separation is us thinking there is, And so I had an incident where a friend of mine came out with her cousin to visit. And by this time I was living I had met someone and we were living on a farm, and I was raising animals. And at that time, around that time, a little bit earlier than that time, a good friend of mine, a couple that I worked for actually, their daughter was killed in a horrific car accident. And the mother was devastated. She was 23 years old. It was 1998. And she had a baseball cap sitting on her casket, and the casket was in her parents' living room, and the funeral services were done in the backyard. And her parents had asked me to read a poem that one of her friends had written. And as I'm reading the poem, a monarch butterfly flies out of the woods and starts flying around her parents and I and her brother. And her mother freaked out because it's the same butterfly that was on her baseball cap sitting on her casket in the living room. And a friend of hers, a friend of this young lady that had died, came up to her mom and said, I know this psychic lady who might be able to help you to connect to your daughter. And Judy came to me and said, what do you think of this? And I said, what do you have to lose? At that time, this is the thing is, I didn't know what spirituality was. I didn't know anything about anything except for the church. I didn't know nothing. And I think in some ways that helped me because I couldn't judge it because I didn't know what it was. And I just kind of let it happen. So she goes to the psychic lady, and the psychic lady says, hey, I need to meet your friend Stephen. So I go to this lady, and the first thing when Judy called me and said, you need to go see this lady, I thought, well, she only wants my money. That's, because I didn't know what to think. But I went to this lady, and I walked in the room, and she puts her hand over me, and she goes, holy cow, you've been to hell and back. You've died 8 times, and you've made it through all of it. And I went, really? I did overdose a lot, but I wasn't quite sure, Mm-hmm. and she said, you have a direct line to spirit. You have a direct line to spirit. And I've never seen anything like it. And I'm like, what is she talking about? I don't know what she's talking about. And then she said, you can speak to all of life, and all of life speaks to you. And I left there kind of overwhelmed, but also thinking, well, she's just telling me this stuff because that's what she does, I took it seriously to a point, but I still didn't believe that I was worthy. I think that's the biggest message is we're all worthy. It doesn't matter what we've done. It's how we look at it and what is the lesson there, And so I soon after that had another experience with a friend bringing her cousin out to my house, and her cousin and I are sitting in the living room. And all of a sudden I start saying things to this woman, and she's like, how do you know this? And how do you know this? And I said, I don't know. It's just coming out of me. And the funny thing is, she was kind of freaked out by the experience, and so was I. She went home that night, and she was laying in bed with her husband, watching television, and she had a houseplant hanging in the window, and she said all of a sudden there was a little light in this houseplant, and I could see this little light. And she said her husband didn't notice it. And she said this little light came flying out of the houseplant and spun around the room and flew right up to her. And she said it was a fairy. And this fairy was translucent and glittered with light. And she said this fairy said to her, isn't Stephen amazing? And we love Stephen's plants. So, and when she called me to tell me this, I went, well, this is crazy, but it's kind of exciting too. And that kind of started this process of me trying to accept and understand it. It took me, years to understand it. So I started to seek answers for what was happening. And at that time, I didn't really know what spirituality was. So I went to priests and ministers and psychologists and therapists, and everyone thought I was crazy. Everyone thought I was nuts, that I was making it up, that it's part of my delusional thinking from my addiction, that I'm mentally ill, that I'm not right. But I refused to believe it. I just refused. And I kept seeking answers. And so I started to get involved in the spiritual community, and I started to do different groups and different meditation groups and things like that. And a lot of my friends knew that I was looking for answers. So I was guided to a shamanic circle that was a meditation group and an intuitive awareness group, and I joined this group. I still hadn't found anyone that could really help me understand what was happening. The shaman lady was helpful to me, but it didn't feel like she was the one that was going to help guide me into this. And I'm sitting in this room, and by this time, my spirit guide is talking to me, but I don't understand spirit guides. But I would listen to him, and I'm sitting in this room, and I could sit there and look at everyone in the room and just know them. I felt like I knew everybody. And so there's this guy sitting across from me. He was 25 years old at the time. And I'm looking at him, and I'm thinking, well, geez, I would never hang out with a guy like this. He's a mama's boy. He's a goody two shoes. He's a nerd. He's a computer guy, And Spirit says to me, no, he is the one who's going to show you the way to us. And I went, how can he do that? He doesn't know anything. He's 25 years old. And William, our guide, that's who we named. His name was William, I found out later. William said to me, he is your brother, and you're going to be with him the rest of your days because he's going to help you understand what this is all about. So I went to him in my naiveness and said to him, we're going to work together. And I scared the hell out of him. But 2 weeks later, we were doing another meditation, and our guide, William, went to him and told him the same thing. So we hooked up, and William started this journey with the two of us. William would speak to both of us at the same time, both of us separate, and we could have conversations with William, and it became natural to me. It just became comfortable to me to have these experiences. But I still had a very hard time accepting it. I really did. I didn't think it was real, even though I was changing and getting healthier, and my life was becoming more whole, I still didn't believe it. It took me until several profound experiences with William to actually believe it was real. And what he did though was he was a big joker. He would make jokes. He would make me laugh. He would make me relax. So I accepted the messages a little bit more. And then I just kept this journey of self-discovery, and people just started coming to me for help out of the blue. And then I started to let that voice guide me in everything I did. And I got hired to work with at that time, they were called high-risk teenagers who were in trouble. And this agency had hired me because I would go out and speak in schools on behalf of the healthcare center about my alcohol addiction. And this agency called me and said, "You have a way with these kids. We would like to hire you to work with kids." And I said, "I don't know what I'm doing." And they said, "Yes, you do." And they hired me, and I started working with kids. And soon after I did that, the clients of that agency started to come to me for advice. And they'd sit with me, and it would just come out of me. And I started to get a following of people, even though I didn't really understand it. I was told by the therapy community that I needed to go and get licensed in therapy and certified in AOJ and all these things. But Spirit was saying, don't do any of that. Just be yourself. And then 2 therapists asked me to join them in their office. And I didn't even know them. They knew this psychic lady that I had gone to and knew. And she had told them to take me into their office to foster my work. And they sat me down and they said, don't get into the system, because the system is going to prevent you from helping people on the level that you need to help people. And I said, okay, because I don't want to go back to school anyhow. So I just started seeing clients for them, but I still worked my regular job. And then I started to get a little known and started to do a little traveling. I'd go to Minneapolis and see clients after meeting different people at different events. And I'd go to different towns in Wisconsin and meet people. And it was really a profound experience for me. I was often just very humbled by it and so touched that people actually wanted to hear what I had to say, because I, to this day, still don't understand it, but I just do it. I just do it. And then Spirit guided me in every job, and everything started to fall into alignment. When we align with ourselves and we align with our Creator, all things fall into alignment. And I started to be guided into everything on how it felt and what I deserved in terms of helping others in a system that always isn't set up to do that. And I became a youth pastor in my church, even though I'll just be honest, I don't believe in organized religion, especially after my experiences as a kid. Right. Especially when God is love, but yet you're condemned. That doesn't make sense to me. And so
that doesn't make sense at all.
No, it doesn't. God is love, and that's all there is. There is no condemnation. That's all human beings, It's all the ego mind, So I became a youth pastor of my church. I loved the minister. I had met him while I was in college, and he was a very cool guy. And I only agreed to join that church with my partner at the time because we wanted a place to belong, And so we became very active in this church, and I became the youth pastor of the church. And I went to the minister, and I had talked to him about everything going on, and he said, I don't understand it, but if you're to do God's work, what is a better place to do it than here? So you just practice and get to know your skills and help the people in this congregation. And I did. People started coming to me from the congregation. And then the high school, I had done groups in the area high school, and I knew the school psychologist, and he said, you got a gift with kids. So he started to call me, and I'd go over to the high school and secretly meet with kids just to help them through a crisis. And I honed my skills. And then I did that for 6 years, and then Spirit came in, and William said, it's time to go. You got to go. And I didn't want to go, but the minister retired. The minister retired, and they hired a new minister. And Spirit came in and said, she's going to be the greatest gift you've ever been given. And I took that literally, like I was going to work in the church and I was going to be with her and help people to heal from their wounds of life. And she was the greatest gift, but I didn't know how it would work out. And often, Spirit will say it's going to be this way, or we think it's going to be this way, but Spirit says, no, it's this way.
Right.
And I stepped down to the church the first day that she was really there after summer break. And the minute I put my foot on the steps of the church, my stomach turned over, my center of self. And I went, uh-oh, something's not right here. And the only thing different is the head of this church. Mm-hmm. And I walked in and she wanted to speak to me and get to know me. So I told her some of this very story I'm telling you. And she said, have you ever gone to seminary school? And I said, no, of course not. She said, have you ever read the Bible? I said, no, I haven't. She said, then you can't know God. And it doesn't sit well with me when someone talks to me like that. And in that moment, I had a vision. I had a vision of her, and I told her what that vision was, and it shut her up. And she got scared of me, but I didn't want that, but it happened. Mm-hmm. But I had to leave. I had to leave a family that I felt I had for the first time in my life since I was disowned by my own. But I knew it was for the highest good, even though I was terrified. And I left that church and left everyone behind. And I said, God, show me the way. And by this time, Spirit was saying to me, you need to work with men. You need to have experiences working with men. Well, how do you do that, So I went on Wisconsin's Jobs, and up came an ad for a job position at a therapy clinic in Wausau, where I live. And I applied for that job, and the director of the agency called me that afternoon and said, we would like to do an interview with you right away. And I was shocked because here this was a social work therapy position. It called for someone with a degree in that. And I didn't have that. I had a bachelor's degree in fine art. But I went and met with her and her co-director, and I told them this story also. And they already had heard about me. And they said, we feel you need to be here to do your work here and help men find themselves and find a better place than what's going on in their lives. So they hired me, and the story is, I'm just giving you a short version of it.
Yeah.
I thought that after I left that interview that they would have the ambulance outside to put me in, in the local mental health ward. But instead the opposite happened, and they embraced me and they said, we're going to foster you and we're going to mentor you in what we do here and how you do your work. And we're going to combine the two to really help people. And by this time I had, been traveling around and doing different stuff. But when I got that job, I just pulled back from all of it and said, this is where I need to be. This is where I'm going to center myself. They told me I had the office with the other two therapists. They said, close down that office and just join us, and you can work for us. And then you can see your own clients and you don't have to pay rent, and we'll support you in all of this, which was really, really unusual.
Right. Exactly.
But both of them were very spiritual. And actually, I found out later that they had sent their kids to me and I didn't even know it. So I started these programs working, and the men, it was programs for men who had problems with domestic violence, with addiction, with anger, with an inability to know how to love and value themselves, growing up in hardship, growing up in poverty, growing up in victimization, And I did that for 16 years. I worked there for 16 years. And when I started there, I said to them, I still need to work with teenagers. I still got to have that connection to kids. Mm-hmm. And I was doing a group at an alternative high school where I went in each semester and did a group for boys or girls, and I taught them self-love. That's really what I taught. And I did that for 23 years. I did a group at this alternative high school for 23 years through many different experiences in my life. And they let me do that. And it was a nice balance of working with men and then working with teenagers and then working with my people. And during that 16 years, I did not I did not put myself out there in any way. No Facebook, no social media, no advertising, no nothing. It was all just word of mouth. And then I started to burn out after 16 years. They told me that I would only last about 3 years before I burned out, but I lasted 16. And then Spirit came in and said, it's time to go. And right at that time, there was a merger taking place with our clinic because it's very hard to run a nonprofit clinic in this day and age.
Yeah. And
so they brought in this other counseling agency that was going to merge with us, which was more federally funded. So they had a lot of rules, and I knew that it was time for me to leave. So I left there in December 27th of 2023. But prior to that, I told them I wanted to cut my hours, and they weren't listening to me. So I got my own little office. So when I left there, I already had my own little office in another building in town. And so that's what I transitioned into, was just working for myself. And then I still work with teenagers. I'm retirement age, so I work part-time for an agency where I do outreach to kids who have developmental delays or behavioral problems. And I get to spend quality time with these kids and just teach them how valuable they are.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So that's kind of it in a very condensed way.
All right. That's quite a journey. So you're working out of your office, right? That's what you're doing now? What you just said?
Yeah, I spend a couple days a week just working with kids, and I have a flexible schedule in that it's a program called CCS in Marathon County where I live. And it's throughout Wisconsin, I think. And it's a program that was developed to reach kids where they're at. So I actually pick up these kids from school or home, and I spend quality time one-on-one with them. And then I'm part of a whole team of professionals who are helping these kids get to a better place. And
I love that.
It's probably the most rewarding thing I've done, because I get to spend time with kids snowshoeing and in the skate park and at the zoo and playing games and really learning to teach them how to value themselves, even with the adversity that they're facing. And then I just see clients, whoever hears about me. But after all this time, after leaving that job, I spent about 2 years where I just kind of regrouped and kind of just worked on myself. And I feel now is the time I need to come out and start to be known a little bit, because I feel like the world is in need of it. We're all being called now. And that's what I feel. And that's why I wanted to do this. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. It sounds like you are really in community. I'm getting some feedback. I'm not sure why I'm getting feedback, but I don't know if you're hearing it.
No.
Okay. All right. It's just me then. Thank you for coming on and sharing your story. And I think I shared with you when we had our initial phone call that I actually grew up in Minocqua. So
yes.
Not real far from you. And
not far. I've been to Minocqua many times.
And understanding that that's an area, that whole northern.
Right.
There aren't a lot of resources for people. And so when there's someone who comes along who has resources or can be a resource, that's really important. So
yes.
I would like you to share with people how they can get a hold of you.
Okay. I have a new website. This is the issue is for 20 years, I've asked clients I can't explain what I do. It's an experience, and I've never put words to it. I've never been able to. So I ask my clients to, and they don't know how to do it either.
But you just put a whole bunch of words to it.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I've ever told that story this public ever.
Okay.
But a lot of it was because my family was very harsh towards me. The healthier I became, the more resentful they became. But I'm the last one remaining in my family. So I think it's time. So you can reach me at, my email is steven@stevenkorznek.com. I have a new website coming up. It should be up in a week or so, stevenkorznek.com. And that is probably the best way to get hold of me, is those two ways. If you type in my name, my phone number is going to come up, because it's been doing that for 20 years. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for being a great resource in an area that really, really needs great resources.
Well,
So,
thank you.
yeah, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Yeah.
And I haven't talked much, partly because I had to mute myself because of the snowplow outside my window. But also because you had such an amazing story. I didn't want to interrupt you. So
Well, thank you.
I,
Thank you
I'm
for letting me talk.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in and for meeting Stephen for the first time in this type of a format.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have a feeling you're going to be really busy.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
You're welcome.
yeah, it's all about helping people. That's really what
Yeah,
I'm about. Helping people. I don't care where you're at.
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, one more question. Do you do online appointments?
Yes, I do. I prefer in person, but yes,
Mhm.
I do. I've been doing either Zoom or phone calls with people for years.
Okay,
Um,
good. Yeah, because
and
this
yeah,
goes out to way bigger than your area.
yeah, yeah. Nope,
So,
I get it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much, Stephen, and blessings to you and the amazing work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been my privilege and pleasure to do this with you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next week, everyone, I am going to have Michael Angus on, and he's a really interesting guy. A lot of paranormal stuff, and I believe he's involved in paranormal television. So it will be really interesting to talk to him. And until then, see you next time.